Hi, I'm Bybreen Samuels and welcome back to another episode of Soul Stirring Astrology, where I give you my textured take on the world of astrology. Welcome back to my Saturn series. Today it's Saturn through the water signs, starting with Cancer. So when we're dealing with Saturn in relation to Cancer, there could be difficulties or you struggle with actually showing your emotions and your feelings. And the reason being is because Saturn in Cancer is associated with the 4th house. So we're dealing with the 4th and 10th house axis. 4th house and Cancer relate to the family. So you may be somebody who was born into a family environment in your very formative years, could have been quite austere, cold. You may have felt a sense of not being wanted, love. There's just this sense of emotional distance. Now, when we're dealing with the 4th house, and traditionally speaking, the 4th house is your foundation. So it's your ancestral line. It's the support mechanisms that you had an expectation that, you know, both of your parents would be there for you. Your father, it was seen, certainly from a traditional point of view, as the breadwinner, the provider, the one who stabilised the family environment. So the parent associated with Saturn in Cancer tends to be the father, but obviously, you know, demographics and lifestyles have changed. So you could have experienced your dad as being somebody who may have physically been there, but was quite withdrawn, was quite withholding, was distant, unemotional. And so therefore you never felt cared for emotionally. He may have provided the physical structure of a home, but it was chilly, the environment was chilly. Or he could have been a parent who was there, but actually he was somebody who was weak, or somebody who was dependent because of an illness, for example. And so therefore you may have grown up as somebody who carried the responsibility of caring for your father, caring for your dad, caring when you hadn't been, when you hadn't been nourished. Because when we think of the 4th house, it's where you're nurtured, you're nourished, you're fed. And if there has been an absence of this, you struggle with emotional intimacy. You're not quite sure. So whenever you appear to be in similar sort of family environments, there's a lack of trust because you don't know what emotional intimacy is. You don't know what it is to actually depend on your family, your parents, your siblings, and your wider family, and to be held and to be nurtured and to be fed. And so therefore you mistrust. And the reason being is because when we think about our different selves, we have our sun, and our sun is, you know, the ego, who you are and what you want or what you need. And then there's the emotional overtone, which gives you a sense of your feelings around what it is that you want and what it is that you need. And then we have the Ascendant, and the Ascendant shows us how we go about getting those things. But they are more of the conscious identities. When you're born into, certainly in your infancy, into your home environment, you pick up things by osmosis, because in your very early life you didn't have language, you didn't have the mental faculties to put things together, to identify what it is that you need and what it is that you want. By the time you acquired those skills, the osmosis of your environment you had already taken in unconsciously. And it's this unconscious fingerprint patterning that could actually override your sun and your moon and your ascendant, the choices that you make in life. And so therefore that's where the tension is, that's where the struggle is. And that's what you're fighting against. Your tension is this duality. You grew up in an environment where it was emotionally very distant, and you kind of learned that actually to protect yourself you need to keep yourself away from yourself, but also other people. And yet, as you move and grow through life, you have an understanding of, well, actually, I have an identity that is separate from my family. I have feelings which are my own, and I could pursue them in ways that are very different from any members of my family. And that's what you struggle with. If you're a woman who has Saturn in Cancer or Saturn in the 4th house, you might have developed a story whereby, you know, men can't be trusted, or men always leave, or men can't provide for you in an emotional way. If you're a man who has a similar placement, you could have a kind of distrust of your masculinity, because you could have been taught that men don't cry, men don't show emotions, men aren't tender. And so therefore you've moved out into the world, you know, wearing your armour, this protection, stoically, or by compulsion. You know, you're compelled to hold yourself in check because that's the pattern that you saw, or the absence of what emotions look like. And, you know, you've absorbed the narrative that men don't cry, boys don't cry, you know, men don't show emotions, and of course men do. So there's the tension, there's the rub. You are struggling with the patterning that you absorbed prior to language and cognition, versus your need to feel part of something, part of an identity. And so with Saturn in Cancer, in fact, it's a very difficult position, because you are fighting against an ancestral line and way of being, and yet you are trying to absorb and understand what it means to self-love, self-nurture, self-worth. You've kind of rejected this adage of, you know, blood is thicker than water. You could be somebody who has a signature who has certainly questioned that. I mean, I don't have Saturn in Cancer or in the 4th house, but I certainly have questioned through my life this concept of blood is thicker than water, just through my own life experiences. And so with somebody with this particular placement, you really have to find your own way of nourishment and development. What is it that really feeds you, and use that as your daily intake. That's what's going to help you bridge the gap between this duality, because you're seeking to harmonize. You want to find your own way of how do you provide emotional intimacy, emotional protection and emotional security. You need to find that within, and then by finding that within, you've got this really clear roadmap that helps you to stabilize, to nourish and to balance yourself. So that's it, beautiful people. That's Saturn in Cancer, or Saturn in the 4th house. It is a very difficult placement, which, you know, if you struggle, don't be, you know, exceptionally hard on yourself, because you're trying to break the pattern of emotional coldness and to bring yourself into a place of emotional nirvana. That's within your home environment, and that's your inner home as well as your external home. So that's it, beautiful people. Put your comments in the comment box below. Share this episode with anybody in your network. Tell me, how do you actually navigate Saturn in Capricorn or Saturn in your 4th house? Sorry, Saturn in Cancer or Saturn in your 4th house. Yeah, look forward to jamming with you. Take care, and I'll speak to you again soon on the next episode, which will be Saturn in, where are we now? Saturn, we've just done Cancer. Scorpio. Just kind of lost my train of thought there. Saturn in Scorpio will be the next one. Take care, and I will see you soon. Bye.